as they're coming back on stage, gosh, I don't know about you, but 24,000 races is a lot of races. I'm telling you what, that's impressive. We had some giants with us today, and once again, we're going to give you an opportunity to ask them some questions. So as you jot some notes on your cards, please pass those to Craig or Pete to the aisles, and we will try to get through as many questions as we possibly can. As they're collecting questions, I guess maybe I'll start with one, and I guess I'd ask any of you that want to take a crack at this, what would you consider to be some low-hanging fruit in terms of improving welfare of horses? What are some things that we could encourage our members and folks that own horses that we train and take care of? What would you say some low-hanging fruit are that we just need to, get the discipline and have the courage to make some changes that would improve both the horse welfare itself and perception of horse welfare? Any thoughts?
I think that it's up to us as, guardians of our association that we pay a little more attention to what's going on, and if you see something, say something. I think that's one of the cool things about what we talked about here today. There's so many good things that go on. So let's not just look at the dark side, because there's so many good things that go on. And so we've got to tell the people when they do something right, but you got to daggum tell them when they're doing something wrong too.
Yeah, Marty, do you have a comment?
I agree with Al 100%, and I think that somebody would respect you a lot more that, if you went up and said something to them, instead of just, riding around talking.
You know what's interesting about this is that people are so worried about their peers, what they're going to say about them, instead of what the public's going to say about them, and that's the opposite of what they should, because they're afraid to go tell somebody that's training horses that does the same thing they are that they're doing something wrong, that their peer pressure would be on them. And I'll tell you what, the way things are today, the only guys that are going to survive are the guys that are going to do it right.
But yeah, like I was saying, if I did something wrong and you came and said something to me, I'd respect you more for saying something to me than going and saying it to somebody else.
You know what? And if you didn't respect me for it, I don't care, because I wouldn't want you as a friend anyway.
It's pretty straightforward.
We got to be selective about our friends somewhere along the way. And Don Dodge always said there's two kinds. There's friends, and you have a very few friends.
Yep.
Okay, and the friends respect you and they understand you and that kind of stuff. And the rest of them, they don't really count anyway. So There you go.
That's good advice. Pete, you have a question for us?
I've got one for GR here. Do you believe jockey and trainers that ride and train quarter horses should be members of the Quarter Horse Association?
For sure. They're making a living. They're making a living with a quarter horse. The membership is minimal. It should be a requirement that they buy a membership. I felt that, and of course I grew up around American quarter horses. My heroes were always cowboys, and I wanted to be a cowboy, but I don't know if I wasn't good enough, and I was just small enough I found a way to make a living being a jockey. But I felt that need to support the quarter horse, and one of the first things I bought whenever I started making money was a life membership to AQHA.
Craig, there you go.
All right, Kevin, does AQHA have a plan to grow future professional horsemen? Very few young trainers are entering our industry. Al and Marty, can you touch on that?
Go ahead. Well, good trainers want to have more than good horses. They want to mentor people to go on and do what they did or whatever. I can't see leaving this industry and me just saying, hey, he trained a good horse. I can't see that. But I can see that they said, he not only trained a good horse, but he treated people right. He brought other people into the industry. He taught people how to do what he does, and he's passed it along. Pay it forward. That's what it's all about.
And I think that, when we're at a show, there's a lot of trainers that aren't professional horsemen that we need to, like you say, mentor them a little bit, go talk to them a little bit, try to help them and tell them some of the benefits to being a professional horseman. I mean, I hear people ask me all the time, they say, well, what are the benefits? And in reality, there are a lot of benefits that come with it. There's the Professional Horseman Crisis Fund. I mean, you get busted up, we're poor broke horse trainers who can't afford insurance. I mean, that's one of the benefits that go with it. And if you're trying to sell something to somebody, be proud of what you are. And if you're a professional, be proud of it. And try to promote the organization.
Another question, Pete.
Marty, what is one of the best ways to close the gap between the open show exhibitor and the breed show exhibitor?
I think a good way to close the gap is, we had a team wrangler conference call. Patty's good about having those, and we get on and we kind of brainstorm. I go out and do a lot of clinics as being on Team Wrangler, and I think that's a good way to get out there. Just being a professional, saying hello to somebody. We don't ever say hello to anybody walking down the street anymore. People walk past you, and people put their head down, just walk past them. Say hi to somebody sometime, and just see the response you get. You go to a rodeo, a high school rodeo, or any sort of function, just say hi to somebody. If they know you train horses, pretty soon they're going to start asking questions, and it's going to start closing that gap, and hopefully they decide they want to show horses or race a horse or read Horse and Rider.
Craig, do you have one?
Yeah, this one might be one for Pete. You ready, Pete? Yeah. Okay. So we have all of our alliance partners, and not everybody's on the same standard or plane with regards to welfare back in the warm-up pen. What can we do as an industry to get all on the same page?
We want them to answer it up there?
Go ahead. You go ahead, Pete. Put you on the spot.
Okay. We're working really hard with all of our alliance partners. Everybody's realizing in today's economy and in today's times, our numbers in all associations have gone down, that it's all together. The better we are together, the better the horse industry is, and the better each association is. And I think that we probably have the best working relationship with all of our alliance associations that I've ever seen. We really, NSBA is really has some strong leadership up there, and they're working hand in hand with us at all time, along with NRHA, NCHA, NRCHA, our team pinning, team sorting alliances. We're always collaborating on our rules, making sure everything's going together, and it's bringing us together to where everybody's doing more of the same, and we're working stronger and we're working together. And I think that that's important for us as AQHA to reach out to those alliance deals and have more of our classes and our horses show there. USEF, we're doing a lot with them.
And a big thing I think that we got to remember that we're in the industry, the horse industry, and so that we got to help close that gap.
Another question.
Got another one here. What is one of the first and easiest way to make a newcomer feel welcome to our business?
Yeah, Jen, what do you think?
I think because at Horse and Rider, obviously, we're dealing with, the more novice competitor than the upper level. I think what we hear the most is they just want, like we said, say hi, offer them help. We heard great stories at some horse shows about a fairly big name trainer seeing a kid struggling in the warm-up pen, and he just went and helped, and it made the kid feel a lot better. It solved a problem. The horse turned out, getting the right kind of treatment instead of a kid that can lose his temper and maybe jerk a little too much or whatever. But I think making yourself available and getting over the equine elitism, and that that person's dumb because they don't already know everything. Of course they don't know it. We have to give them the information. So bridging that gap is opening yourself up to the opportunity to educate other people and share the knowledge, because not everybody grows up in this, and it's not second nature to them, and we have to teach them. And then they come into from the open show world, then they progress maybe to the novice, and then they move up the chain. And then you have, if they're a youth member, you have a member for life. If they're an amateur, you have a member who sticks with it and You know, as they grow in their own personal career, they have more money to spend, and they're with you for life too because you've built a relationship with them.
I'm curious. I would be questioning you guys going back to this ethics and welfare. We haven't talked a lot about the push-pull relationship between owners and trainers, and the fact of the matter is that you all do it. Whether you're riding a racehorse or training a horse, or somebody else that may own the horse, they have some economic expectations they want to achieve. You're their person, right? And sometimes they put pressure on you to do things with horses that you may or may not feel comfortable with, and you may or may not need their business, or the threat of losing their business may be a bigger issue at one time of your career than another. How do you advise people to handle that? Saying, you know what, there's some things here that, you know, at one level I'm respecting the check I'm getting, and the people that are paying me on another level, that's not who I am and what I'm about. Give some sage wisdom. Those of you who've been in this ways to how do you reconcile that and stay true to your morals and values as it relates to taking care of horses?
Go ahead.
You know, you can't ever go wrong as long as you always do the right thing. And just be honest with people, and don't tell them what they want to hear. Sometimes that's the hardest thing in the world, is to be honest with them, you know. And honesty and the right thing, you can never go wrong. And if they can't handle that, you don't need them as an owner. It's that simple.
You know, I've trained thousands of horses, I think. I don't know, hundreds maybe, I don't know, whatever it is. I can't keep track of them, but I can tell you this. The people that didn't listen to me and wanted to push it, and wanted to push the horse or push me, they're not in this anymore, you know. The people that I told the truth to, you know, the truth hurts sometimes, but the people who can't take the truth, you know, I look like a bad apple that spoils the batch, okay? And I'll guarantee you, if you'll tell them the truth, and if they can't take it and they leave, you'll fill the spot with somebody better. So it's better to tell the truth and do it right than it is to just play the game.
Mm-hmm. Marty, you have a...
Yeah, I think you got to stand for something, and if you know what you stand for, even if it means standing alone, you know, make sure you stand in the right place. I've had people bring me horses, and they've told me what they wanted to do with their horse, and it wasn't the right goal for their horse, and I told them that's not the right goal. They took their horse down to other trainers, and the other trainers took their money. I mean, we all love money, but they took their money and just took advantage of them. And they got out of the industry, and they come back later on and they said, you know, we probably should have listened to you, because that wasn't the right, you know, we went to this other trainer and they told us what we wanted to hear. They didn't. You got to listen. If you ask a question, you know, somebody asks a question, make sure you listen.
That's good. Craig, Pete, do you have another one?
Yeah, Jen, this is for you. It's kind of on the same deal as the Alliance is all working together, and as we all know, all of our different parts of the horse industry all has to work together to make it everything go. How do you feel your publications and publications as a whole are doing things to create new memberships?
Wow. I do know with Horse and Rider that we work very closely with the Quarter Horse Journal and the AQHA magazines. I mean, part of that is because I came from there, and so I know everyone. But you know, we talk to each other about things that we can do together. We try to collaborate in, you know, having like a similar message where we all can work together. But as far as new members, I think the first step is getting people involved with the horses before you can convince them to buy a lifetime membership to AQHA. And yeah, we do. We diversify across all the Western disciplines, and we're really embracing the riding stuff and trying to have more of that. Sorry, trying to have more of that in the magazine, where we try to keep it pretty broad and show people all the opportunities that they do have within AQHA and other organizations as well.
Good. I've got one more for
Sure.
GR.
Fire away.
How long did it take before you felt like you knew how to really ride and win a race?
You know, the jocks room can be one of the most intimidating places in the world for a young kid to get started. You have older guys that have been riding for a lot of years, and and a lot of them don't feel like they accomplished what they wanted to. And anytime they see a new young kid, that you can tell whether someone has has what it takes. You know, it's you you have to you have to be confident in what you do, and you know it, and you can't be scared. And those guys pick up on that right quick, and they'll start to try to intimidate you. And and I'd studied the great riders even when I was before I'd even rode a little bit, when I was just galloping and making trips to the races with my dad and things like that. And I knew right off that hard work and repetition that I was going to do well. I knew it. I won the first official race I ever rode. Of course, that probably helped my confidence tremendously at a 16-year-old kid. But looking back, I know that my dad set that up, and it really helped my confidence. And I knew that I was going to do well because I was confident. I knew hard work would get you there.
Good. I have a couple of questions I want to point to Marty and Jen. Thinking about the two youngest folks on the panel, and I want to ask it from a different perspective. Marty, you and I were talking a little bit, and you said you weren't exactly sure you're going to come back into the horse industry. You interviewed for a job as a...
No, I was staying in the horse industry.
Well, but
just a different avenue.
Different avenue, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
I want to ask you, number one, what can we learn about attracting young horsemen? What attracted you to come back and be a professional horseman as opposed to just going off rodeo? And the second question I want to ask Jen is, you're a young mom. You're kind of the age group that we were talking about earlier. You could very easily choose to get your kids involved in a lot of other things and say horses were a nice part of my life, but we're in Colorado Springs and we're going to do other things. Tell me what we should know about moms who you interact with every day in Colorado Springs and what would or would not attract them to do the same thing you're doing with your kids. Marty, you go first.
So Kevin and I were talking earlier. When I was in high school, I quit showing for a while, and just like I said, I grew up in a rodeo family, and so I decided to just rodeo. We were open a lot. We were open 5 nights a week, and I went to Greeley Fort Morgan, Greeley, Colorado, and I was going to take a job on a feedlot over there, and I came back home after being over there for a little bit, and I decided my parents had a 2-year-old that we were going to show at a futurity. And so we took that horse down and we showed it at that futurity, and Clark was the judge down there. And Clark had said, offered me a job. And you know, him and Annie, I don't know how many of you guys know his wife Annie. Annie is one of the nicest people to be around. She's very pleasant and always welcoming, you know, everybody and trying to make you feel good about yourself. And so, you know, she made me feel so good about myself. I thought, you know, I'm going to go take a job with him. and so I took a job with him, and I'll tell you about my first day there. This might have scared somebody off. So I go to Clark and Annie's, and it was I get out there, and Clark says, "There's a buckskin horse in the barn. Go catch that horse." So I went out there, caught this buckskin horse, and we led it up to the cross ties, and we went to saddle that horse. And he says, "Throw your saddle on, take it out to the round pen." So I go to throw the saddle on this horse and take it out to the round pen. Well, the horse is like jumping around, really skittish, cinchy. And he says, "It's good, take it out." So we get it out. And he says, "I'll be out there in a minute." I get that horse out to the round pen. We run it around just a couple of times. He says, "It's good." I mean, as this thing's bucking hard around the round pen. Clark says, "Catch it and get on." I said, "But it's still bucking." He says, "I don't care. Get on." So I go grab this horse, and growing up in Elko, it's still a ranching community, and growing up on a ranch, I mean, the horses, if they bucked and they bucked you off, you got flogged. And I mean, you got beat. So I grabbed this horse and I cheeked this horse and I stepped up in the saddle, and that sucker, it bucked around the round pen. And he's over there dying laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. He says, "You can stay." The horse industry, to me is what's welcoming, is that it turns into a family.
Wow.
So, you know, I grew up with people that I showed with, we rodeoed with, the ranching community, and it turns into a family. And since I've been a director and I've been coming to the convention and going to the world shows, you know, I haven't missed a world show since '96. You meet new people every time you go to a show, and you develop that friendship and that camaraderie for somebody, and it turns into a family, and it keeps you coming back. And that's why I say, you know, if we say hello to somebody, or, you know, make them feel welcome. then they'll keep coming back. But if we go and they don't feel welcome, they're not going to come back.
Huge, Pete. You know, we talked about Starbucks earlier, and one of the famous quotes from Howard Schultz is, the founder of Starbucks, he says, "We're not in the coffee business serving people, we're in the people business selling coffee." And the reality is the same is true in the horse business, aren't you? You're in the people business,
Yeah.
working with horses. Jen, give me your reaction to what we can learn from other young moms like you, and what you think we can do to intrigue them to do the kinds of things you're doing with your young kids and getting them engaged in the horse industry.
Yeah, I think the mom question has always been really important to me, because I did leave the horse industry for a while, and then I came back. So I think there's two opportunities with moms. You have the moms like me who left, and I was lucky enough to get to come back, but not all those other moms who, you know, quit riding after they were done with college and they had to go get their first job, and then they got married, and then they were working and they had kids, and oh my gosh, it's just so overwhelming. But we have to get that mom back to the barn. So if you have mom friends who are like that, who grew up, you know, you used to compete with them as a youth or as a young amateur, and they're not in it anymore, invite them out to ride, and they'll bring their kids, and the kids will play in the dirt with your kids, and they'll play trucks, and they'll get on, and they'll all have a ball, and then they'll want to do it again and again and again. So we've got to get the moms back who have left. But then also in that my kids are in, you know, a suburban school instead of a rural school. What I found is we have to make mom feel safe, and that the kids are going to be safe. And helmets with kids, I know in a lot of our personal lives it's a personal choice, but to make that mom feel safe, let them know we have helmets. We have, you know, a really quiet horse. Never say bomb-proof, but he's quiet. Let him come out and ride. Let them just come out and hang out with the horse. I know, like my youngest, for a long time he was most interested in just going up and talking to old paint, their gelding that they're learning to ride on, you know, and we just want to go up and talk to him, sing him a song, tell him about his day. And if you let the little guys go up and do that, and then they find their own way. But we have to invite those moms to bring their kids out to the barn and welcome them, teach them, you know, don't, you know, treat them, you know, like they have something to learn and that they're welcome there. So I think there's really two opportunities to get mom back.
Outstanding.
Can I just add one more?
You bet.
While we're talking about kids, I think kids nowadays, where we're so involved in social media, they've always got their heads down, and people don't communicate like we've been saying. And so you see a lot of kids, and they have bad communication skills.
Sure.
But they come out and they start building that bond with that horse, and they start building that communication with that horse, and pretty soon that starts growing, and pretty soon they start coming out of their shell. And then they start talking, and they're telling their friends how much fun they had with the horse, and pretty soon their friends are telling their parents and saying, hey, so-and-so's over there riding a horse, I want to go ride, and then they're bringing their friends, and you know, it can spread, but we have to make it a fun experience for them.
No, it's interesting enough, and honest story is just this weekend I had another load of straw delivered to me. It's a sure sign that we won't have any more moisture in Colorado, because we'd had such a snowy winter, and I was afraid I wasn't going to make it through the rest of spring. Guy comes from Sidney, Nebraska to deliver a load of straw with his 12-year-old daughter. My son, the son I was telling you about, had Peyton saddled up. That girl, I could say, as we were unloading the straw, I could tell that girl was just eyeing that horse. And I said, would you like to ride that horse? And she said, yeah, it would be fun. So I said, so we put her up in the saddle, Colin led her around, and as he was riding her, leading Peyton around, started talking to Dad. This is Sidney, Nebraska, all right? This is a guy that grew up on a farm and farms, but they live in the town of Sidney. And he said, then he starts almost apologizing to me. He said, yeah, she'd love a horse. But he says, we don't have a place to keep it where we live there. And I'm not talking about suburban Denver. It's Sidney, Nebraska, right? And she says, and then we'd buy it, and then I'd be the one having to run across town to feed it. And he came up with all these excuses. And meanwhile, this little girl was having an absolute ball. And finally, he had to ask her 3 times, now, hon, I think we need to get back to Sidney now. You know what I mean? And get her to climb down off that horse. But it was a great, visual to me just a week before I was coming to do this thing, that here's a girl in rural America, Sidney, Nebraska is still rural, with a dad that grew up on a farm, who is not, and the girl would get a horse at the drop of the hat, but that girl is right now being restricted from doing something that she would clearly, at least apparently, like to do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's not without challenge, and it may not be as easy as it was for you that grew up on a ranch with horses all around you, but we got to find a way to work at it. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, growing up, I I always wanted a four-wheeler. And I always asked my dad, I said, Dad, can we buy a four-wheeler? And he said, there is nothing that you can't do from that horse that you can do with a four-wheeler. I mean,
That's
we
classic.
pack salt, we fence posts, everything from a horse.
That's right.
I
That's
still
good.
never got my four-wheeler.
You never got your four-wheeler, and we're glad about it. Would you join me in thanking these folks? You're welcome. Go ahead, man. Well, we're going to wrap up this afternoon. If I could have my slides back, we're going to do a couple of polling questions, wrap up with a couple of closing comments, and let Craig bring us home. Question for you. Have you witnessed firsthand a training method that you think would be perceived? Now, I have two questions, and they're slightly different. That would be perceived as animal cruelty by what we're going to call an objective third party. The objective third party comes in, sees what you're doing, or what somebody's doing. It's not necessarily you. But it would be perceived as animal cruelty by an objective third party. Yes or no? We're going to wrap it up. 93% say yes. All right. Now, this is a slightly different question. Have you witnessed firsthand a training method that would be perceived as animal cruelty by an uneducated bystander? So we're just taking, hey, somebody comes to the National Western Stock Show, they see something going on, they happen to be there with their family, they're an uneducated bystander, have not been in any way, shape, or form accustomed or acclimated to the horse industry. All right. So 98%. So the point is that there's work that we have to do in both of those cases, right? It's not just the uneducated bystander. It's also an objective third party that would look and see some of the things that we do and would say, should we really be doing that? And is that really the right way? And I want to tell you, across all industries, right? I spent a lot of time with animal care and welfare across all livestock species. And I think we're all asking ourselves that same question of saying, that's the way Dad did it, and I saw him do it, and that has never been penalized in my family, because that's just what you have to do. But you have to take a second look and say, no, is that really correct or not? Next question. How would you rate the prevalence of questionable training tactics in the quarter horse industry? It's being real specific. Shine the mirror on us in our industry. Would you call it very rare, occasional, often, or excessive? What would you say in the quarter horse industry? Few more. All right, I'm going to close it. 3, 2, 1, and we're closing. Okay. So kind of in that middle range, from occasional to often. We could agree that that's probably not the score we'd like to see. Would you agree? There's some room for improvement there. Fair enough? How often do you see acceptable training methods being used with excessive force? It's something that Al mentioned a bit, right? So these are acceptable training methods, but they're being overused or used with excessive force or in some way, shape, or form in an unacceptable manner. All right? So occasional, there's some awareness building that could happen there, right? What is your belief about the use of performance-enhancing drugs and medications in the horse industry at large? Which one of these best describes it? They're used by a small handful of owners, trainers, and exhibitors. It's a small problem with a small handful of folks. They're used broadly across the industry. They are a, quote, necessary evil in today's competitive environment. They are ruining our industry. Where would you vote? So 50% of you saying, hey, they're used by a small handful of folks, but another just about a third saying that they are used broadly across the industry. So I'd be curious to know kind of where that stands. But again, we wanted to get some opinions of people sitting in this room. What do you believe is the issue that creates the most negative attention or publicity related to horses. We're going to open it up, a couple of topics that we've not talked much about today, but is it horse slaughter? Is it the mistreatment and malnourishment, mismanagement of horses? Is it inhumane training practices, some of which we've discussed today? Abuse or misuse of drugs and medications? Or is it something else that drives the most negative attention on our industry? So 44%, nearly half, say it's about mistreatment, malnourishment, and then a lot of pretty equally split. Of course, horse slaughter comes in second, but the others are pretty equally split. What should AQHA do to eliminate questionable training methods and or substances? Is it about increased testing and monitoring? Changing the criteria that you use to select or judge competitions? Is it about increasing penalties for those who get caught? Is it just about member education, making certain people know what to do and how to do it? Or is there some other solution? What would you say? We're cheating up in the front row here. Doggone it. I can tell there. Doggone it, Kim, now. All right, so the two that generated the most attention was to increase the penalties and increase member education. So you need to know better, and if you don't know better, we're going to slap your hand a little harder. We're going to do something. Here's an interesting question. Dives into some of what we're going to talk about in the morning real quickly, but how should we measure our success at the American Quarter Horse Association? It's a great question I have with lots of organizations. Is it about the increased number of registrations? Is that how you gauge success? Is it about entries in AQHA events? The number of transfers of horses, meaning that people are buying and selling horses? There's economic activity. Is it the increase in the number of AQHA members, the sheer number of members that we have? Is it the number of equine opportunities available, number of equine opportunities to get involved in, or is it something else? How would you gauge, or how should we measure our success at AQHA? Look at that. By far and away, okay, increase in the number of AQHA members. This is about getting more people involved as members, it looks like, and followed secondly by the increase in the number of equine opportunities available. All right? Well, guys, as we wrap up today, just a couple of things. I've made some notes, and I won't share a lot of them, but I gathered some insights as we went through the day. I mean, we need to think a little bit about our demographics, don't we? We heard that 57% of our members have been members for 11 years or more, that 49% of them are 56 years old or older, and that we've seen a 26% decrease in youth. Fact of the matter is, we need to think about this membership acquisition and retention, get more young people involved. We heard that, again, I think challenged by Patty to get a little edgy. It was a great commercial by Budweiser, right? And she challenged us, I think, about how we interface with and attract non-traditional people in our industry, how we get rid of that equine arrogance. We heard a little bit about the ranch horse use. 43% of the horses, and was it 70,000 members? Is that what you said, Kim? Directly tied to ranch horse use, and the fact that there's lots of people using horses in ranch work that creates some excitement. An opportunity to really capitalize on the do-it-yourself movement. We heard the importance of context and background, Jen, from social media. Post positive things. Al, I appreciate your comments about professionalism and what it takes to be a professional, and I'm going to remember that point about playing the tape all the way through. That's great advice for life in general, isn't it? And Marty, thank you for challenging us to be more welcoming to people, for being friendly, for trying to get rid of some of the barriers that seem intimidating in the business. GR, I appreciate your comment as you just challenge us from a racing standpoint to love the horse and the tenacity that you showed. More importantly, I just took a lot away from the creativity of that dismount. Sometimes, you know what? Sometimes we just have to take a little risk, right? And we have to leave our mark and create a brand impression. It sounds like that's something that you've done. Well, here's a couple of challenges that I would leave you with. Warren Bennis, a published author in the leadership realm, says this: adaptive capacity is the ability to be attuned to the developments in the external environment, and then to act on those changes accordingly. I think Time to Ride is a wonderful example of the industry coming together and saying, you know what, the world is changing, our consumer base is changing, we've got to adapt and adjust and find new and different ways to engage people. Most all of you in our very early poll said the reason you're involved in this industry is because your parents were involved in it. Your parents introduced you to the horse. And we know the math to that is not very promising for the horse industry. If we only rely on parents who have horses introducing other people to the horse industry, this thing does not have a very attractive future. We've got to think differently about it. Would you agree? And I applaud all the efforts and AQHA's role in doing that. I would say this. I won't spend a lot of time. It's late in the day. But you know, the fact of the matter is, you all have heard it before, that the only person who likes change is a baby with a wet diaper. And I think there are two ways that people and organizations react to change. Would you agree? They either define what that change means to them as a business and organization, they make decisions about what actions to take, and they deliver positive results, or they deny the change like Kodak did. They deny the change like Blockbuster did. They delay in making a decision. Hey, we've got all these brick and mortar stores. Why would we want to go into the online rental business of DVDs? And ultimately, they go into decline and die. The commonality is this. I love this statement, and I'd leave you with this challenge. In times of drastic change, it's the learners who inherit the future. The learned usually find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. We got to be open-minded and constantly be learners to be leaders. I showed you a quick clip of the Maverick movie before. I'm going to share with you another one. Let's fire away, gentlemen.
75.
Oh, 75. Well, that's that more than takes care of your bet, and I'll raise you whatever that is. It looks like 100.
Oh, shit, I'm old.
Hey, you never paid to look.
You said you never bluffed. I'll have me a pair of aces.
No, I said I never cheated, and I also said I hardly ever bluffed. This was one of the hardlies.
You've been cheating the whole damn game.
Now, what do you think I was doing during that first hour? I was learning your tells. Incidentally, your particular weakness comes when you get your hand and you shuffle the back cards to the front and the front cards to the back and switch them all around and act a little fidgety.
I just called you a cheat.
Well, you also called me gutless, but I figured you would just tease me.
Get your hands off of him!
So the point I want to make is learners are winners, aren't they? Spend some time asking yourselves, what do we learn from this, and most importantly, what actions to take. My closing slide before I invite Craig back up is this. It comes from Harry Truman. He says, men and women make history and not the other way around. In periods where there's no leadership, society and organizations stand still. Progress occurs when courageous, skillful leaders seize the opportunity to change things for the better. Guys, you've been given lots of fodder from lots of bright and accomplished people. Go out there and change things for the better. Craig?
Well, what do you think? We had a heck of a couple of panels, didn't we? Great evening, great afternoon. I want to thank all of our panelists. What an all-star group. GR, congratulations on your retirement year, and you have been an inspiration to a lot of young people. I got a lot out of this weekend, and we're getting ready to go into some serious committee meetings. So let's hope that we put our thinking cap on as we become a more family-oriented, youthful, enticing organization, and we create an environment that's non-threatening. We create an environment that's inviting, that's welcoming, that's humane, that's fair, that's honest. And so let's think about all those things that we talked about today, because there's a common thread through all of them. So want to thank you all for being here and staying the distance.